Hello, everybody, and we are back with a new episode of Inspired Alignment, a new podcast in YouTube. And we are Tenshy,
Kia.
and we together are Inspired
Inspired
Alignment. Our podcast has the intention of inspired whoever feels called to spend a few of their time with us, hearing a very spontaneous conversation about our journey together, sharing a space, living in the same house, two families, 8 people in total. And our idea is to let everybody knows what it's about and all the ups and downs that we go through. What are the things that we discover in our journey about ourselves and about each other, and how we, with an open heart, shine a light, probably, knowing that we are safe with each other here. Like everybody, all the 8 members of our families are safe in here to be who they are. And we are discovering who the other family is. At the same time, we discover who we are as a family and who we are individually. So it's a very interesting journey. So I hope you stay with us. And yeah, I feel called to follow our journey.
Yeah, I would say it is also like the intention of the podcast and sharing our journey is to let people know that there is a different way of doing things and to, I guess, give like the inside scoop of what our version of a different way of doing things is. Because when my family and I left in an RV 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, yeah, I think about 2.5 years ago, we packed up our lives and me and my 3 kids moved into an RV. And in the past 2.5 years, the amount of time I've had people saying to me, like, I want to do that. I wish I could do that. I'm looking for a village. I'm looking for a community of people to do motherhood with. I am looking for a group of people that seem to share my values. I'm looking for people that want to do life differently than the systems that are already in place in our planet. I'm looking for something different. I have heard that so many times, like countless times. And so I think part of our intention of finally deciding to sit and record what are very spontaneous conversations. And like sometimes I come and I sit and I'm like, I don't even know what we're going to speak about. But I know that there's a lot of value in our journeys. And so, yeah, just sharing and opening a space for people to see an honest and authentic way and tale of this is how you could do life different, or this is maybe inspiring you to change something in your life if you want to, if that makes sense. Which is not exactly where we thought we were going to go today, but I don't know if we want to follow it a little ways down the rabbit hole. Yeah, maybe I can back up the bus and, well, okay, yeah, maybe I'll back up the bus. I just said that my family and I left 2.5 years ago in an RV. But for those of you who have no idea who I am originally from Edmonton and I was a civil engineer and I worked downtown Edmonton in a big corporate office for a number of years, and like totally lost myself and like sold my soul, it felt like. Not like there was anything wrong with the company that I worked for. It wasn't anything specific like that. It just, I learned very rapidly that I was not meant to sit at a desk. And couple that corporate career journey with a very intense personal journey that involved my partner and my father of my kids. We were kind of going through our own challenges. And then right before, him and I were actually talking about taking a trip and doing a little bit of van life, as it is so trendy called nowadays, van life. We were like kind of making plans to take off and do, I think, a shorter version of this RV thing. And I won't get into a complete story about that right now, but things did not go the way that we thought they were going to go. And we actually ended up taking separate paths, him and I. And I decided that I was still going to take off with my kids, which, like I said, there's 3 of them, and a dog, actually. So it was myself. And at the time, I think Tucker was 9. And if Tucker was 9, it's 2 years ago. So Tucker was 9, Felix was 4, and Daxie was 2 when we left. And Brutus, our beautiful mutt. So we just literally randomly bought an RV. Not randomly, but I'd never driven one or ever used one before, ever. So went and bought one. Didn't really tell anyone what I was doing and decided that we were just going to take off. I rented out my house, and we fully committed to going. And we didn't really have any plans. We just kind of decided to check out Canada. I've lived in Canada my whole life, and I hadn't seen a lot of it. I've always come to BC, but beyond that, I haven't ever gone anywhere else. So we decided to take one giant vacation and go find ourselves a little bit more. And I think I will let you talk a little bit about this part of your journey, and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, my journey was different, or our journey from my family of 4 was a bit different. We were going through a very, very rough patch of a financial situation, thinking that everything that we had built was now gone. And from a place of not knowing what are we supposed to do now. It's like in order for us to keep and maintain our lifestyle, we had to go through certain sacrifices that I was not willing to do at the time. Like you, my youngest was also 2, and Nico was 6 at a time. And the only way that we could afford our lifestyle was for me to go from being a full-time mom to start working, putting my children in daycare or places that I said at the beginning, since way before I was a mom, that I was not going to put them in. And that was a place that I was not willing to go. Like, that was a sacrifice I was not willing to pay. And Ivan and I sat and it's like, okay, what is our biggest expense? It's like, of course, the house and the cars. And, you start taking note of what are your expenses and what you're willing to let go. As we decide, like, the house, how can we afford the house? We cannot afford the house right now. We cannot afford, like, most of the things. That was at the period of COVID. And for us, we were business owners. So there were so many benefits as business owners that we could enjoy, and others that we could not enjoy, and with a price at the end that we were not willing to pay either. It's like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing? There was no business for us, and I one day, like, what are we gonna do? We cannot afford the house, and now we have to move. Like, what are we doing? And I suddenly was, I don't know, like, the solution at the same time is like, finally the time is here. When I told him, honey, we have always wanted to travel, and we have never been able to travel the way we wanted because we always have to pay for everything. And at the end of the month, when you are done paying as a business owner, you have very little to put aside to enjoy vacations somewhere else, where you still have to pay not only for the house and your living, but also for the business. And it's like, now let's get rid of all the expenses that we have. Let's just get rid of all and go on an adventure. And at the time, we were thinking about actually traveling to Mexico, like just being there and still running a little bit of the business while in Mexico. My brother was living at the time in there. It's like, well, we can stay at my brother's and his wife, and we can just enjoy Mexico while COVID happens. And surprise, surprise, we could not travel anymore because we decided to go without that thing. So that was not an option. It's like, okay, well, we need to continue dreaming on the traveling, because for me, I don't know, regardless of the financial situation, something in me got alive. It's like, finally, I get to do what I want to do. Thinking about ways of doing it is like, well, we need a house. We still need a house. And in this country, we cannot afford right now a house with the characteristics that we are used to. In order for us to stay in a place, we had to not only downsize, but go into small places that I know I cannot have my children because mostly my oldest one with the level of energy. Just imagining that we're gonna go to an apartment and living with that child, making him be quiet all the time, that was for me a nightmare that I was not willing to go through. I don't know how we got into the idea of buying an RV.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's go an RV. We can still continue with the business online. It's not making as much for the house, but it will be enough to cover for the RV and the campgrounds and, like go to the minimum. Let's get rid of this and that. And we just got to the bare minimum because I was not willing to let go my time with my children in exchange for a house and a status quo that it was not me. Like I really didn't need that. I will say that was probably a step, maybe 3 in a phase in our life where I see it as getting completely naked, like the external things that you think makes who you are, but in reality they are not.
Yeah.
And you feel afraid. It's like, oh my gosh, like what if I don't have a roof on my head, and my family? Like, like how am I gonna be able to live without a roof? And I don't know, willingness. It took willingness, risk, seeing the willingness and the risk as an adventure. And we decided we thought about an RV, and our family lost their mind. It's like, are you guys crazy with 2 children? How are you gonna do with an RV? We're thinking of a very cheap RV. Like I remember my brother saying, it's like, but what if that RV is gonna leave you in the middle of the road, and who's gonna rescue you? Who's gonna take care of you? Who's gonna come for you? And I was like, I don't know. And you guys have no money for repairman, and I don't know. It's like, so well, long story short, we ended up buying a trailer
Yes.
and a truck,
Yes.
like double expense that we were not thinking of.
Yeah.
Right now, 2 years, 3 years after, we are thinking that it could have been the trailer, the RV, sorry, in my mind would have been better. For Ivan, it's like, no, the best decision was the trailer and the truck. But yes, open to the adventure, not knowing where we were going to go. Not even in our mind was like, yes, we're going to move to BC, from Alberta to BC, Canada. But also planning and thinking about going south
Yeah.
because of the weather and everything. But COVID made it very difficult for us to move further south.
Yeah.
And we got trapped in BC. And I said trapped because it was a desire of my heart to be in BC, to be in the island. But it was not the intention to stay. Like, we never left BC, Alberta, thinking that we were going to move to BC.
Get to the
It's
island.
like, we're going to go, we're going to travel, but we're not moving to. It's like, yeah, it's part of the adventure. And yeah, not so long after we arrived, we started meeting people and feeling that sense of community that I have to say a difference as yours. I didn't have the dream of living in community. I think as you had it, I think you were always clear on that's what you wanted. For me, I don't know, because I'm more on my own. Like, I've been always on my own. Solitude does not scare me. Like, I can be alone and be completely okay. I don't feel lonely by being alone. Living in community should have, like, for me, it's like, well, I would like to live with other people in a community that also enjoy their space and their, time alone,
Yeah.
and go deeper together, like the way we're doing it right now. But at that time, for me, was like very utopic. Like, that doesn't exist yet. But yeah, we started meeting people, and we met each other
Yeah, it's
totally random.
yeah, this could be the origin story. But before I go there, I should say, yeah, like I have had the desire to live. I don't know, like, yes, definitely community, but like that vision of a community has shifted multiple times. Like, we're talking since I was probably 15 years old. Me and my good friends then, who are a lot of them still my good friends now, would discuss like how cool it would be to just get a big piece of land and like they have a house and I have a house and then we could all just hang out and like all the excuses that you have to not be able to hang out with each other go away. Especially because I was one of the first people in my friend group to have kids. And so I think that was another time that like reaffirmed that I wanted a community because I wanted to be able to hang out with my friends still. And at the same time know that there was like a safe place for my kid and then my kids and just being able to be surrounded by people. And then I think as I went further into motherhood and I found that whole concept of like takes a village to raise a child and where the hell is the village, it was even more so like I want this community, like this is what I want. And then we didn't intend to stay in BC either, actually. Like I said, we decided to travel Canada and we did to an extent. Like we left Edmonton, we came west. We came all the way out to the island to see some family because that's what we did most summers. And we left in the summer. And then we actually headed back to Edmonton for a couple of things and then went on to go very, very far east. We had the intention to go to the Maritimes, but we didn't quite make it. But we did go a lot of places. And then we ended up back in Edmonton to winter because wintering in the RV was not sustainable anywhere but Vancouver Island, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work for us on Vancouver Island. So we stayed in a house in Edmonton for a couple months that first winter in the RV. And then we were going to take off again and go east to get to the Maritimes because that is still the pipe dream. And I got a phone call, or no, I haven't got there yet. I skipped our origin story. We ended up back on the island is the point. But when we came out to the island right in the beginning, this was August of 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we came out to the island and we were traveling around and my family would go to this beautiful park that exists in one of the towns here. It's this incredible space, like a giant playground for kids right on the beach. There's like a boardwalk. There's always something happening for all ages. It's such a special place. And down at the one end of it is a labyrinth. And if you don't know what that is, it's like a maze, but without walls. So it's just like painted on the ground.
Yeah.
And it's not a maze because there's only one path. Like you cannot go the wrong way. It all goes into the center, but it's not kind of logical. It's arbitrary. It's kind of meant to be like a mindful thing. And me and my kids loved it there. So we went there multiple times and we were there one day. And I could hear my daughter, who was 2, kind of sounding frustrated. And I kind of looked up and saw her playing with another small child who was about her age and was like, I don't know what's going on here, but something is happening. I guess I should pay attention. I was probably journaling because I took my peace whenever I could, all the time. It was such a lovely phase of life where my kids could just be free and I was just kind of there. But I felt like I needed to pull my head out of my journal and actually see what was going on. And the child that my daughter was having some sort of conflict with was her beautiful son, who was also 2. And we both kind of came, as moms do, to be like, what is going on here? Let's figure this out. And then for some reason, opened a conversation. I guess for some reason you talk to humans, so it was not out of character for you to like strike up a conversation with a random
people, yeah.
on the beach. For me, that's like, I don't do that. But I was like, okay, sure. This lady's talking to me. And it was just a very interesting conversation where somehow, like, what are you doing here? Turned into me like pointing. My RV was parked in a parking lot right there. So I was like, oh, that's our house. We live in that RV right there. And they were like, oh, no way. We live in a trailer too. And then
And our trailer was on the other side. It's like,
yeah, that's right. We live over
ours.
there because they were in a campground at the time. And then it was, I'm from Edmonton. Oh, we're from Calgary. No way. How long have you been out here? And our like starting points were very, very similar. And randomly, for some reason, again, I think this is, again, something you do, but to me was so strange. Like you either asked for my phone number or Facebook or something.
Yeah,
And so-
I ask you to stay in touch.
Yeah.
Like, let's just keep in touch. If you are on the way, Right now we're in Vancouver Island, but in my mind it's like tomorrow we will be, I don't know, in Mexico. And I want to know where you are, so maybe we are in the same
Yeah.
area and we can continue hanging out and getting to know each other.
And so we did, and I think we saw you. I think we had only managed to meet up like one more time on
Maybe
the
one more
island.
play.
We
Yeah.
talked about it a couple of times, and it just didn't work out. But we met up one more time, and the kids played at the park, and it was like, it was not earth shattering. Like, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this human is going to mean like
Yeah, but
everything to me. It's good. But and then me and my kids carried on. That was like the original summer, and then like I said, we went back to Edmonton for a little while, and then went all the way east, and ended back up in Edmonton for the winter. And it was while I was in Edmonton for the winter that this beautiful woman called me, and we had a conversation about something, and we had
we were
obviously shared.
texting. I remember it very vividly.
Okay.
The moment we were driving, actually.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you came to my mind. Well, I have these things like I have to pay attention to my thoughts and
Yes.
the messages that I receive.
Yeah.
So I had to text you, and I just asked you, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And you were in Edmonton at that time, and it's like, well, we are doing this and this. And I started telling you about the village that Lisa started at that time.
Yeah. The community that you'd found
Yes.
of what you thought was very like-minded humans to us.
Yes, actually, I hear you talking about your vision of the village
Yeah.
with your friends, and I didn't have that vision. But when I heard about the village of non-poked people, for me it was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone, because I was at that time in a very dark space where I was the only one.
Yeah, that was the first time you reached out to me, actually. I don't know if you remember that. The pressure was like mounting for people to change their minds.
Oh yes,
And you were like,
oh
I don't know, like, how are you handling
yes,
like the choice that you made? And are you sticking to it? And like, how do you have steadfastness? Because I
yes,
don't know anymore.
yes.
And I was like,
I
I
was losing,
don't know.
literally losing my
Yeah.
at that time. I was really in a very dark place,
Well,
like
it was a
with a lot of
very,
fear.
yeah, it was a really scary time. That's what I was going to say is like, and I think because I was probably one of few people that you knew was in the
Yes.
same boat as you and was open.
Yes.
That's why, like, we were still basically strangers at this time. So
Yes.
she was like, I'm going to call this one person that I know has this in common with me
Yes.
and is open to hear where I'm at and just like talk this out.
Yeah. I actually didn't. I was not as open to share that thing with anybody else, because
At that
I
time,
didn't want to like be rejected, or if something escalated
yeah.
to a place that I had to be forced to do something for me
Yeah.
or for my family. I was like, I don't want anybody to know
Yeah.
what's in my mind right now.
Yeah. That's good.
But that time when I texted you and to see how you were doing, I had heard about this village that was created by Lisa,
Yeah.
and I don't know, getting into that space was like, oh my gosh, like I am not alone. Not only because of this choice,
Yeah.
but I don't know, there was a warmth in there that I haven't felt in a long time.
Yeah.
It was that sense of familiarity with a stranger.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you. I know you. I see you. And I know you see me. And just knowing that you see me is like, oh my God. Like, like I don't have to show up so much because you see me.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I don't have to pretend because I know that you see me. And I feel like what you see, it's accepted and it's okay. And I'm like, my soul was singing, like, oh my goodness. And she started telling me about all the plans, and, this is going to be for this and this is going to be for that. And it's like, oh my, just in the middle of the city.
Yeah, I was going to say we maybe should define or give a brief explanation of what this village was, because it was not people living together.
Yeah.
It was basically, yeah, like someone deciding that their home, which is within like city limits, so just an average house like you would find in Edmonton or Calgary or a normal city, very central, was going to be like a gathering space for anyone who was feeling on the outs during a time where there was a lot of people on the outs. And there was a lot of things that we were told, because we made the choice not to take the vaccination, that we would be not included in. And so they kind of tried to make a space that was like, we will include everybody because we just want people to feel like people. So they had a lot of offerings of things that we were not allowed to participate in like a legal whatever standpoint, and they just held a space for people to come and connect.
Yes.
But yeah, it wasn't a community where people lived together. It was just a space, yeah, to come together. Like they did a lot of potluck events, a lot of just come together, bring what you can, let's share a meal, let's have conversations, let's have a space where you can feel
Let's
like your
help each
kids
other.
are okay and your kids are going to be safe and no one's going to be asking your kid if their mom or dad did or didn't do whatever in relation to this disease, right?
Yes.
So
It was a lot about, I think I have to say, I come from a country where a family is everything,
yeah,
and family always comes first.
yeah,
And family is always there for each other, always. And since I moved to Canada, I didn't have that sense of family, even though my family lives in Canada too. And gradually, over the last 20 something years, I would say 25 years, they have been coming to Canada
yeah,
to the same kind of location.
yeah,
But I never felt that kind of familiarity outside of my family, because you can feel that sense of familiarity outside of your family in Venezuela, but not here. I never felt it as well, at least.
no,
And coming here was like, oh my gosh, it's like I'm back home
yeah,
in many different ways. Like number one, the environment here and the I don't know, the weather and the people, the openness, the rawness of people, the I don't know how to call it. Like there's an authentic part of people here in the island that I couldn't find while I was in Calgary. And I met wonderful people in Calgary. Don't get me wrong, but not this quality of people. And for me, it was like I'm home. I am home, and because of that, and I remember actually coming to the island on the ferry, and I was like bawling, like crying with a lot of anxiety in a good way,
yeah,
because I knew that my family was my people was on the other side. Like my people is waiting for me in the island.
yeah,
I didn't know at the time what I meant with that,
yeah,
what that voice meant with that, but my heart knew it. It's like I can feel you. I can feel you. Like like I was just drawn. My heart was just, oh, I'm coming home,
yeah,
and that's how I feel since I got here. And it all started at that village.
So you discovered that village. Well, you were kind of invited to discover that village.
Yes, one day at this playground that you described
Yeah.
before.
Striking up a conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, what do you mean?
With you kind of struck up a conversation with
Oh,
another
yes.
random.
I was at the play. No, actually, yes and no. At that time, I was so afraid of showing up and being seen
Yeah.
that I was very quiet. Like it's been actually a very moment where I was like the most quiet. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
say anything,
Yeah.
which is very unlikely for me, very unauthentic to me. It's like I am not a quiet person. Like I talk,
Yeah.
and at that time there were two moms talking back and forth about the same choice that I had made at the
Yeah.
time. And when I heard them, I immediately turned around. Eva was there, like Eva,
Yeah.
our friend Eva. And even if you see me, like I always tell you, it's like Thanksgiving for me. It's like, thank you, Eva, because you brought me to my people. And I'm going to start crying now. But I hear Eva and Amanda talking. And I don't know, something is like, oh my gosh. And I just came close to them and I said, like, I was listening to you and I was hearing you talking, and oh my gosh, I am not alone. And you have no idea what this conversation between the two of you means to me, because I just moved from a different province, a different place with nobody here. I didn't know anybody at that time, nobody.
Yeah.
And I have felt so lonely, even though I do not feel lonely when I am alone.
Yeah.
But at that time, I felt like I was the only alien
Yeah.
choosing something that I should have said yes, but my heart is like, no, don't. Means even if it means, if it costs everybody around me to go, I will continue choosing what my heart asks me to do. And they hugged me. The three of us cried together because it was a very moving moment, and then she talked to me about this place. Like, have you heard about Lisa's place? And I was like, no, we're having a potluck this Sunday night. You have to come.
Yeah.
Search for her on Facebook and search for it's like, oh my gosh. And then the journey began.
And then for some reason, you decided to tell me about it. Because I didn't know. I was not on the island. I was away.
And we haven't
And
talked.
I was deciding to go east. Like literally the opposite direction if your Canadian geography is not so great. I was in Alberta and I had the intention to make it to the Maritimes, go the complete opposite way. And that was like me and my kids were kind of making our plan, like talking about our route and who we were going to visit and where
I
we were going to
know.
go.
Probably, and this is not coming like very accurate, like I'm not completely certain of it, but I think because you and I had the same thing in common, like
Yeah.
our choice was the
Yeah.
same. No, and because I had contacted you before
Yeah.
asking you, what do you do? Like,
Yeah.
I'm feeling this way and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And when I found them, for me, it was like a relief. And I
Yeah.
wanted to share that with you. It's like, hey, there is this group of people.
Yeah.
It's not only you and I, and the random person that you have around. Is like, there's a whole bunch of people. Like, I think at that time, the gathering was like 70 people,
Yeah.
all with the same choice.
Yeah.
70 people gathering for Christmas
Yeah.
when we were not supposed to.
Yeah.
And it was the most beautiful Christmas I've ever had in my life because nobody was in a financial situation to celebrate Christmas in the way that like we used to before
Yeah.
COVID kind of thing.
Yeah.
And dinner for us, at least, like what kind of dinner? We're just the four of us in the trailer.
Yeah.
Forget about cooking anything in the oven because the oven turns off every 20 minutes. Like, what kind? And no, at the time we didn't have the thing.
Yeah.
But 70 people or more
Yeah.
gather in that tent in the winter time. Really cold because it was outside.
Yeah.
And it was so touching, so beautiful. Like everybody brought something.
Yeah.
And everybody ate a little bit of everything. And we had like a feast. Everybody ate way more than we could have because there was so much food. And we ended up being sick. I think half of that group, right, got sick with COVID.
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful seeing everybody taking care of each other.
Yeah.
Like I was delivered the jars, the mason jars,
Yeah.
full of broth, like bone broth, for me and Ivan because my children were okay, but me and Ivan were sick.
Yeah.
And we were delivered nebulizer and silver
Colloidal silver.
colloidal, what?
Colloidal silver.
Colloidal silver, that one, not soil, silver. And
there was-
vitamins and medicines and you name it because we couldn't go anywhere. Like, you're sick, stay at home.
Yeah, and not just you guys. Like it was kind of a massive chain reaction of everybody taking care of everybody.
Yes.
And then when you got better, like you passed it
Yes.
on to the next
Yes.
person who needed it.
Yes, the nebulizer actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Nebulizer was bought randomly,
Yeah.
just in case, by the grandma of the village.
Yeah.
And that nebulizer passed from house to house, from house to house.
Yeah.
The same nebulizer. Like,
Yeah.
I
Sorting it all
don't,
out.
I am not sure, but I am almost sure to say that that nebulizer served everybody and not two people needed it at the same time.
Yeah.
And the colloidal silver too.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I took my part and I passed it on. Like, it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And yes, that was the beginning of the community. I will say in the heart for me.
Yes.
That was the beginning of what I envisioned in my heart somehow, that I thought it was ideal
possible,
but
yeah.
not possible yet,
Yeah.
is happening. And it's happening, and how can I contribute to this? Because I am pouring my soul into this because I want this not only for me, but for my children too.
Yeah.
That was the first time for me when I started being seen as a mom and noticing people around me that did things similarly to me. Now it's, I will call it trendy, but now I think as mothers we're more aware on things that maybe I will dare to say 6 years ago, 7 years ago, even 9 years ago, that was not as current and as valid as it is right now. Like nutritional wise, and how to approach discipline, and how to actually educate children. At that time, more than 50% of the children in that village were being homeschooled. And not because of COVID only. Like it started earlier, it started before.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like I found a lot of validation for the things that I was doing. And no, it made me move and shift from I am crazy, and everybody says that I'm crazy because I'm doing the things that I'm doing, to, oh, you're not the only one that is crazy. There are more. Welcome to the crazy world. And I was like, yes, finally, I can be who I am and not being criticized for it.
Yeah. Yeah, all of a sudden it was like a world that was, like you said, this unattainable utopian dream. It's like, no, it's possible. It's possible and it's happening.
Yeah.
There are people that are still willing to see the soul rather than all the baggage that the soul brings, I guess. And like, not that they don't want to see your baggage, but they don't let your baggage that you're bringing define you. They still just see your soul for who you are. And yeah, she sent me a message saying, you need to come back. I found our people, and I think you will fit here. So come check it out if you want. If you want. And I was like, I don't know if I want to. Like, we're going east. Pretty sure we're going east. We have stuff to do up that way. But for some reason, we didn't. We turned it around and we decided to come out here. And actually, in an ironic turn of events, us coming back out here did not lead Tenshy and I to sharing much space in the beginning.
No.
We kind of were on different timelines with what was happening for us. Pretty much the whole time I was here in that first stint. I came back in March, and then me and my kids ended up going back to Alberta once again because we still wanted to travel a bit. So they had summer camps and I wanted to go camping in Alberta and do a couple other things. So we went back in June, I think. So we were here March, April, and May. They're here for 3 months. And I think I saw you twice or something.
Maybe.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot. And I met a lot of other fantastic people through that village and kind of went on my own journey with that whole thing. But we did not yet connect. And then I went back home, or not home, but went back to Alberta and did all the stuff that I had to do there for about 2 months. And Tenshy called me a couple of times while I was on that trip and was like, let's make plans for things. And I was like, okay, I
At
don't
that time
know
was
what my
homeschooling.
plans are. Yeah,
At that time
homeschooling.
was homeschooling, because the time before we spoke, we were talking about your concerns mostly,
Yeah,
about your oldest
yeah,
journey, being from going to school in regular
Public
schools,
school, yep.
to online school during COVID,
yeah,
to homeschooling. That was a question mark for you. It's like, I don't know if I should do this and I should do that. And that was probably the longest conversation uninterrupted that we had
yeah.
in a long time.
We're just kind of
And
figuring
it
out.
was more about homeschooling.
Yeah.
So when a few people from this village decided to homeschool together,
Yeah,
I was like, I have to call her, because the village is shifting, it's growing, it's expanding, and now we are covering the homeschooling aspect.
Yeah.
And you have to be part of this.
yeah. And I was like, sure, I'll come be part of it, but like on my terms. I was like, I'm not going to move in. Like a couple of the village families had ended up, Tenshy included, had ended up living in the same property. So they were like a next step of the actual village. There was 3 families there at the time. And they were like, do you want to come be the 4th family here? And I was like, no. No, I do not see myself here. I do not see space for me here. I have a place that I'm okay to stay. I'm very happy there. I do not see myself here. And all of them were like, okay, but like there's a place for you here. And I was like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no.
It's funny because even though you were invited to be part of that community,
Yeah.
nobody except for me and Ivan knew who you were. Remember?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, it was a very weird community, to be honest, because there was the family who opened their space to us who knew you guys.
Yeah.
But then I dropped another member, like from afar. While I was away, I called that family and said, will you open space for a friend of mine?
Yeah.
And they were like, sure, why not? So it was like one person knew me very well, didn't know you guys really well, kind of dropped him in there. And then I was like, you guys have like your own fun and I'm not going to come be a part of it.
Yes.
And through a whole bunch of circumstances, I did end up, me and my family also moved there. And we had 4 families living on one property doing a homeschool collective, which was a very interesting human experience. A human experiment is what I was going to say.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, we took like 4 families whose primary values I really think are freedom and like time freedom,
Yes.
and kind of said, you can have your time freedom, but not on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because we're doing things at certain times and you have to be there. And we were all like, that'll be fine. And then we all very quickly were like, oh, it's so icky to try and be somewhere at certain times. But yeah, I brought that up basically to say, like, our journey started as strangers on a beach. And then you were the reason that I came back. But it still took us a lot of time to get to a point where we were even cohabitating. And I had a lot of resistance. And then it took, a year from that point
year.
for us to kind of strike out and do what we're doing now. Like, all of that is all that has transpired in the last 2.5 years, summed up in a sort of concise manner. And I don't know, I think like we actually, when we talked about doing the podcast, we had discussed doing our origin story, because I want to be cool like Marvel. Our origin story as like the episode 1, so that everyone could understand more about Tenshy and more about me and about her family and my family and how we got to where we are. But then we didn't start the podcast when we thought we were going to. And then, I don't know. Oh, because yeah, that's right. We were going to begin this podcast before we moved in together.
Yeah.
We had been talking about the
Sharing
need for
that.
these conversations, the need for these going in depth conversations to be shared with everyone who is open to hear them, because we know not everybody wants to hear the things that we talk about. But we also know that there are many of you who are looking for somebody who feels the same or thinks the same or acts the same or has the same thoughts in their mind and do want to go on these conversational journeys with us. So we've been talking about that for a year? Not quite, because it wasn't right when I moved in that we decided to do that. Probably
but
7 months or
I
so.
will say more, for sure, more than 6 months.
Yeah. And then for one reason or another, it never kind of went anywhere. And then when we finally decided to do this and physically move our spaces to right here, that's when we decided to begin the podcast. And that's why we started the podcast with like, hey, here's our origin. This is what happened. We moved into a house together. But there's so much more to the story and so many more really beautiful moments and like gigantic moments of risk. Like number one, like she was talking about like moving her whole family into a trailer and selling their house and being like, we're just going to jump wholeheartedly into this lifestyle. And a different version of that for me, I'm going to leave my house behind, quit my job entirely. Like I had a solid, steady corporate job and I was like, meh, I don't need that anymore. I'm just going to not work for a while and I'll figure it out, you know? Those moments of risk. And the moments of risk for me, I do not really talk to strangers. And like, not like I'm afraid of strangers, but I'm just not a social being. But to open myself to have a conversation with a human on the beach and allow them to have my phone number and connect in that way. And then to completely change my path from east to west to come back here. And for her to invite me continuously into this space. Like, I was still very much a stranger to her. But she just, you know, continued to open that space and
Following my heart.
trust. Yeah.
Following my heart.
Yeah, exactly. And now, like, we have no idea where all of this is going to lead us. We keep talking about our version of community and village and how we get there and what we even think it is anymore, because I think it shifts a lot.
Always, yeah, it will always shift. But I think that's why we're doing the podcast. So it's not only a way for us to share and inspire others,
Yeah.
but in some ways it's a way of documenting our own journey or our own interest kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like and as we are talking, I can see the shift and the expansion and the, like where is it going. And maybe this is a good way to close this episode.
Okay.
When
Jobs.
Steve Jobs
Okay.
says that you don't know where you're going
Yeah.
until you turn back and see where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So you will never know where you're going until you know where you're coming from. So this, for me, it's a good way to go back in time. And something has been shifting along our conversation in me, moving. It's like that Kundalini
Mm-hmm.
snake moving on along my chakras.
Like during this conversation?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, I can see the root and the second and the third. And it's like, oh my goodness, we are heading to the heart chakra in this journey. And whew, I would like to close it in here because that is a conversation for a next episode. I love doing this. Leaving you hanging is like, oh, but tell me more. But that is my invitation for the next episode. And
I'm intrigued also.
there you go. Yeah. Shall we say goodbye?
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. Yeah, full transparency is we had no intention to talk about any of that today. I just decided. Well, I don't think I decided. I just followed the words that were coming out of my own mouth. So thank you for coming on a journey with me, the one that we were meant to take. And thank you for coming on this journey with us and allowing us, yeah, to just say what we feel so led to say and to allow it to penetrate into your minds and hearts and souls and just into your beings. And so you can take whatever is yours to take from our conversations. Share whatever you've heard, talk to your friends about whatever you've heard if it's something that interests you or something that you've never considered. Or if you are personal friends with either one of us, talk to us about it. We'd love to hear it.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you. I just always feel so grateful at the end.
Me too. Well, thank you so much for watching. And we hope to see you soon again in the next episode.
Until next time.
See ya.